Emma had always prided herself on being close to her younger sister, Lily. Despite their occasional disagreements, as siblings do, their bond had always felt unbreakable. Emma was the responsible one, the one who had guided Lily through breakups, bad grades, and tough decisions. So, when Emma got engaged to Jake, her boyfriend of 3 years, it never crossed her mind that Lily could have any feelings for him beyond the polite friendliness of a future brother-in-law. Emma's engagement to Jake had been one of the happiest moments of her life. Jake wasn't just her fiancé, he was her best friend. They had met at a mutual friend's dinner party, where they'd spent hours talking, laughing, and discovering they shared a love for hiking, old jazz records, and late-night conversations. From the start, Jake seemed to understand her in a way no one else did. Over the years, their relationship had grown into something Emma thought was rock solid, the kind of partnership she could build her life around. When Jake proposed, Emma was ecstatic. She called Lily immediately to share the news, and Lily seemed just as thrilled. "I'm so happy for you, Em," Lily had gushed. "Jake's a great guy. You deserve this." Emma had brushed off the faint note of awkwardness in Lily's tone, chalking it up to her sister's tendency to feel emotional during big family moments. She'd had no reason to suspect that anything was amiss. The wedding planning began in earnest, and Lily, as Emma's maid of honor, became deeply involved. She helped Emma pick out her dress, taste test cakes, and choose a venue. They spent weekends poring over color swatches and floral arrangements. Emma thought it was a perfect way for them to bond, a reminder of how strong their sisterly connection was. But as the months went by, Emma started to notice subtle, unsettling changes in Jake and Lily's behavior. Jake, who had always been attentive and engaged, began pulling away. He would disappear into his phone during their evenings together, something he'd rarely done before. When Emma asked him about it, he brushed it off with excuses about work stress. "It's just a big project," he'd say, kissing her forehead absent-mindedly. Lily, too, seemed less enthusiastic than before. She would cancel their wedding planning dates at the last minute or show up distracted, her eyes darting to her phone whenever she thought Emma wasn't looking. At first, Emma attributed it to stress. Lily had always been a bit flighty, and Jake's job was demanding. She told herself she was overthinking things, that it was normal for people to have ups and downs. But one evening, as Emma sat on the couch with Jake, something happened that she couldn't ignore. Jake's phone buzzed, lighting up the screen with a message preview. Emma wasn't one to snoop, but the name Lily caught her eye. Before Jake could react, Emma saw part of the message. "I miss you. Can't wait until the next." Jake quickly grabbed his phone and locked the screen, his face a mask of forced nonchalance. "Who was that?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside her. "No one," Jake said, too quickly. "Just a coworker. Nothing important." Emma didn't press him further in that moment, but a seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few days, her mind raced with questions. Was it possible she was misinterpreting things? Could there be an innocent explanation? But the pieces weren't adding up. Jake's increasing distance, Lily's evasiveness, the text message, it all pointed to something more. One night, unable to take the uncertainty any longer, Emma decided to look at Jake's phone while he was in the shower. She hated the idea of invading his privacy, but she needed answers. Her hands trembled as she unlocked his phone using the passcode he'd shared with her months ago. The truth was worse than anything she'd imagined. Scrolling through his messages, Emma found an entire thread of conversations between Jake and Lily. The messages were intimate, flirtatious, and unmistakably inappropriate. They spoke of secret meetings, shared jokes, and late-night confessions. In one message, Lily had written, "I wish I didn't feel this way, but I can't help it. You make me so happy." Jake's reply was equally damning, "I feel the same way, but we have to be careful. Emma can't find out." Emma's heart pounded as she read through the messages, each one a dagger to her chest. Her stomach churned with a nauseating mix of betrayal, rage, and heartbreak. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The two people she trusted most in the world, the two people she loved more than anyone else, had been lying to her. When Jake came out of the shower, he found Emma sitting on the edge of the bed, his phone in her hand. Her face was pale, her eyes red with tears. "We need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake froze, his expression shifting from confusion to panic as he realized what she must have seen. "Emma, I can explain," he began, but she cut him off. "Don't," she said, holding up a hand. "Just don't. I read the messages, Jake. I know everything." For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of Emma's shaky breathing. Then Jake tried again, stumbling over his words as he attempted to justify the unjustifiable. "It didn't mean anything," he said. "It was a mistake. I love you, Emma. Please, let's talk about this." But Emma couldn't bear to hear it. "How could you do this to me?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "How could she do this to me? She's my sister, Jake. My sister. And you," she shook her head, unable to finish the sentence. Jake tried to reach for her hand, but Emma pulled away. "Don't touch me," she said, standing up. "I don't even know who you are anymore." The days that followed were a blur of pain and confrontation. Emma confronted Lily, who initially tried to deny everything but eventually broke down and admitted the truth. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Lily sobbed. It just did. "I'm sorry, Emma. I never wanted to hurt you." But Emma couldn't find it in herself to forgive. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too raw. She called off the wedding, cut ties with Jake, and stopped speaking to Lily. The once close bond she'd shared with her sister was shattered, replaced by an aching void that Emma wasn't sure could ever be filled. As Emma packed away her wedding dress and canceled the plans she'd spent months working on, she felt as though her world had crumbled around her. But even in her pain, a small part of her knew she had made the right decision. She deserved better than lies and betrayal. And while the road ahead would be long and difficult, Emma was determined to find her way back to herself. Months had passed since Emma's world had come crashing down. Though she tried to focus on rebuilding her life, the betrayal lingered like a shadow she couldn't escape. Cutting ties with Jake had been devastating, but losing Lily, the sister she'd shared a lifetime of memories with, felt like a wound that refused to heal. Emma had thrown herself into work, desperate for something to fill the void. She spent long hours at the office, volunteered on weekends, and even signed up for yoga classes, hoping they might bring her some semblance of inner peace. But no matter how busy she kept herself, her thoughts always found their way back to Jake and Lily. Were they still together? Did they feel any guilt? Or had they moved on, happily building a life at her expense? She got her answer one quiet Saturday morning when she opened her mailbox and found an elegant cream-colored envelope addressed to her in Lily's handwriting. For a moment, Emma just stared at it, her stomach churning with dread. She didn't need to open it to know what it was. Her hands shook as she tore the envelope open, revealing the gilded wedding invitation inside. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the union of Lily Harper and Jacob Anderson." Emma's vision blurred as she read the words. It felt like a cruel joke, a deliberate stab to remind her of everything she'd lost. They were getting married. They were celebrating the relationship that had destroyed her. She wanted to tear the invitation to shreds, to throw it in the trash and pretend she'd never seen it, but something stopped her. Instead, she placed it on the kitchen table and stared at it for what felt like hours, anger and disbelief swirling in her chest. By the time she called her mother later that day, her emotions had hardened into a cold fury. "Did you know about this?" Emma demanded the moment her mother picked up. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Emma," her mother began hesitantly, "I was going to tell you." "So you knew," Emma said, her voice sharp with betrayal. "They're family," her mother said, as though that excused everything. "Lily told me she wanted to reach out to you personally, but she thought you might not want to talk to her. She was hoping the invitation would be a gesture of goodwill." "A gesture of goodwill?" Emma repeated, incredulous. "She's marrying my ex-fiancé. There's no goodwill in that." Her mother sighed. "I know this is hard for you, but she's still your sister. She loves you, and she wants you there. We all do." Emma's jaw tightened. "Do you really think I want to sit there and watch them exchange vows? To celebrate their happy ending when it came at my expense?" "Emma, please," her mother said, her voice softening. "I know they hurt you, but holding on to this anger isn't going to make things better. Maybe going to the wedding will help you move on." Emma ended the call soon after, unwilling to listen to more platitudes. The idea of attending the wedding was unthinkable. And yet, as the days passed and the RSVP deadline loomed, she couldn't stop turning the idea over in her mind. What would it be like to see them again, to face the people who had betrayed her? Part of her wanted to ignore the invitation entirely, but another part, a darker, angrier part, felt drawn to the idea of showing up, not to celebrate, but to make sure they knew that their actions hadn't gone unnoticed, that their betrayal had consequences. When she finally sent in her RSVP, marking yes in a bold, decisive stroke, she wasn't entirely sure what her plan was. All she knew was that she wasn't going to let them pretend everything was fine. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of conflicting emotions. Emma found herself dreading the event but also feeling a strange sense of anticipation. She thought about what she would say, how she would act, whether she would confront them directly or let her presence speak for itself. She bought a sleek, understated black dress, deciding that if she was going to attend, she would do so with dignity and grace. When the wedding day finally arrived, Emma felt a mix of anxiety and determination as she got ready. She applied her makeup carefully, choosing a bold red lipstick that made her feel powerful, even if she didn't quite believe it. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was doing this. The venue, a charming countryside estate, was the same one Emma had chosen for her own wedding. Walking through the gates felt like stepping into a twisted version of her past, one where everything had been stolen and repackaged for someone else. Emma was one of the last to arrive, slipping into the back row of the outdoor ceremony just as the music began to play. Her heart pounded as she saw Jake standing at the altar, his face calm and composed. Lily appeared moments later, radiant in a white gown that Emma recognized immediately. It was the dress she had picked out during her own wedding planning. As Lily walked down the aisle, her eyes scanned the crowd. When she spotted Emma, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she quickly recovered. Emma stared back, refusing to look away. The ceremony passed in a blur, the words of the officiant barely registering in Emma's mind. All she could think about was how surreal it felt to be there, watching the man who was supposed to be her husband marry her sister. She could feel the stares of her relatives, the whispered conversations about her presence. When the ceremony ended and the guests moved to the reception hall, Emma kept her distance, observing from the sidelines as Lily and Jake greeted their guests. She noticed how Lily avoided looking in her direction, how Jake seemed to tense every time he caught sight of her. It wasn't until the toasts began that Emma finally made her move. As Lily's maid of honor gave a glowing speech about love and family, Emma stood silently at the back of the room, her heart racing. When the speech ended, she walked toward the microphone, ignoring the confused looks from the crowd. "Excuse me," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "I'd like to say a few words." The room fell silent as Emma stood at the front, her gaze sweeping over the crowd before landing on Lily and Jake. She could see the panic in their eyes, the way Lily's hand tightened around Jake's arm. "I wasn't sure if I should come today," Emma began, her voice calm but laced with emotion. "But then I realized that I had something to say, something I think everyone here deserves to know." As she spoke, she felt a strange sense of liberation. The weight of the past months, the pain and betrayal, seemed to lift with every word. And as the truth spilled out into the room, Emma knew that she had made the right choice. She wasn't there to ruin their day. She was there to take back her own power, to remind them and herself that she was stronger than their betrayal. The reception hall fell into an uncomfortable silence, the kind that buzzed with tension just below the surface. Emma stood at the microphone, her heart pounding in her chest but her voice steady. She could feel the weight of every gaze in the room, their curiosity and unease palpable as they waited to hear what she had to say. But Emma wasn't nervous. Not anymore. She had spent too long feeling silenced, her pain swept under the rug while Lily and Jake paraded their relationship like it was something worth celebrating. This was her moment to reclaim her voice, her truth. "I debated whether I should even come here today," Emma began, her tone calm but firm, cutting through the whispers that had begun to ripple through the crowd. "When I received this invitation, it felt like a slap in the face. But I realized that sitting at home, ignoring what happened, wouldn't help me heal. And maybe, Just maybe, being here today could bring me a sense of closure. From her vantage point at the front of the room, Emma could see the tension on Lily and Jake's faces. Lily's smile was frozen, her knuckles white as she gripped Jake's arm. Jake looked like he wanted to sink into the floor, his jaw tight and his eyes darting toward the exit as if plotting an escape. The rest of the guests exchanged confused glances, unsure of what was happening but instinctively leaning in to catch every word. Emma let her gaze sweep over the crowd before continuing. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Emma Harper. I'm Lily's older sister, and for a long time I thought we were close. I thought she was someone I could trust with anything. But life has a funny way of showing you people's true colors. A murmur ran through the room, a few scattered whispers growing louder as the implications of her words began to sink in. Emma pressed on, her voice unwavering. Some of you may not know the full story of how Lily and Jake got together, Emma said, her eyes locking onto her sister's. But I do. Because Jake wasn't always Lily's fiancé. Once upon a time, he was mine. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs, the guests visibly shifting in their seats. Emma could see her parents in the front row, her mother's face pale and her father looking as though he wanted to intervene, but didn't know how. Lily's friends were whispering furiously among themselves, their wide eyes darting between the sisters. Lily stood abruptly, her voice sharp as she called out, "Emma, stop it. This isn't the time or place." Emma turned to face her sister, her expression calm but resolute. "The time and place were stolen from me when you decided to start a relationship with my fiancé behind my back. So I think I'm entitled to say what I need to say." Jake remained seated, his face flushed and his hands clenched tightly on the table in front of him. He looked like a man who had finally realized he couldn't charm his way out of the mess he'd created. Emma turned back to the microphone. "I won't take up much of your time. I just want everyone here to know the truth. Lily and Jake didn't fall in love in some romantic, serendipitous way. They fell in love while Jake was engaged to me, while we were planning our wedding, while I trusted both of them with my whole heart." She paused, her voice softening for a moment as the weight of her words settled over the room. "I can't tell you how much it hurt to find out that the two people I loved most in the world had betrayed me. It broke something in me that I'm still trying to fix. But standing here today, I realize that their actions say more about them than they ever could about me." Lily stepped forward, her voice trembling as she tried to take control of the situation. "Emma, please. I know we hurt you. I'm sorry, okay? But this is our wedding day. Can't you just let us have this?" Emma tilted her head slightly, studying her sister. "You're right, Lily. This is your wedding day. But it's also a reminder of what you were willing to sacrifice to get here. You took something from me that I can never get back. And maybe you're okay with that, but I'm not." She took a deep breath, her voice steady as she delivered her final words. "I came here today to remind myself that I deserve better. Better than betrayal, better than lies, better than people who don't value loyalty. I'm walking out of here knowing that I've taken the first step toward moving on. I hope you can live with yourselves, because I'm finally learning how to live without you." With that, Emma set the microphone down and walked off the stage, the room buzzing with stunned silence in her wake. She didn't look back as she made her way toward the exit, her heels clicking against the polished floor. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of release, as though the weight of everything she had been carrying was finally lifting. Outside the venue, the crisp evening air hit her skin, and she took a deep, cleansing breath. The distant sound of murmurs and whispers from the reception followed her, but she didn't care. She had said her piece. She had stood up for herself in a way she never thought she could, and now it was time to move forward. As Emma reached her car, she realized she wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't even sad. She was just done. Done with the pain, done with the betrayal, done with the people who had hurt her. It was a strange feeling, a bittersweet mixture of loss and liberation, but it felt right. For the first time in what felt like forever. Emma smiled. A small, quiet smile, but a real one. She had faced the people who had wronged her and come out stronger on the other side. And, though the road ahead would still have its challenges, Emma knew she was finally ready to start walking it. As she drove away from the venue, leaving the chaos of the wedding behind, Emma felt a sense of peace settle over her. This was her new beginning. In the weeks following the wedding, Emma felt as if she had stepped into an entirely new chapter of her life. The confrontation at Lily and Jake's reception had been cathartic in ways she hadn't anticipated. She had stood up for herself, aired her pain, and let the world, including her family, know what had happened. But more importantly, she had let herself know that she was done carrying the weight of their betrayal. Still, closure didn't mean the pain magically disappeared. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. Emma replayed the scene at the wedding over and over in her mind: Lily's stunned expression, Jake's flushed embarrassment, the shocked murmurs of the guests. She wondered how it had ended for them after she left. Did they continue the party, pretending everything was fine? Or did her words hang over the room like a dark cloud? But soon, Emma realized that dwelling on their reactions wasn't worth her time. She had done what she needed to do, and the rest was no longer her burden to bear. It was time to focus on herself, her healing, and her future. Emma decided to take some time away from her family, setting boundaries she had never dared enforce before. Her parents had reached out multiple times after the wedding, pleading for her to reconsider her relationship with Lily. "She's your sister," her mother had said during one particularly tense phone call. "You can't just erase her from your life." "I'm not erasing her," Emma had replied, her voice calm but firm. "I'm choosing to protect myself. Lily made her choices and now I'm making mine." Her father had tried to play the role of peacemaker, suggesting that the family get together for dinner to talk things out. But Emma had declined. "I'm not ready for that," she told him. "And honestly, I don't know if I ever will be." For once, she felt no guilt about prioritizing her own well-being. To Emma's surprise, her resolve seemed to spark a ripple effect. Friends who had been distant during the aftermath of the betrayal began reaching out, offering their support and encouragement. Some admitted they hadn't known what to say or how to help, but now they were eager to reconnect. Emma welcomed them back into her life cautiously, grateful for their presence but mindful of her newfound boundaries. She also began seeing a therapist, something she had resisted for months. At first, the sessions were difficult, talking about her feelings of betrayal and loss, dredged up emotions she had tried to suppress. But as the weeks passed, Emma found herself feeling lighter. Her therapist helped her unpack not only the pain caused by Lily and Jake, but also deeper insecurities and patterns she hadn't fully acknowledged before. "You're allowed to grieve," her therapist told her during one session. "You're mourning not just the loss of a relationship, but also the loss of trust in two people who were supposed to protect your heart. That kind of pain doesn't just disappear, but it doesn't define you either." Those words stuck with Emma. She began journaling every morning, pouring her thoughts onto the page and slowly untangling the complex web of emotions she had carried for so long. The process was messy and non-linear. Some days, she felt strong and hopeful. Other days, she cried until her chest ached. But through it all, she kept moving forward. One crisp autumn afternoon, Emma decided to revisit one of her favorite hiking trails. It was a place she had often gone with Jake, and the thought of returning there alone had once seemed unbearable. But now, she felt ready. She packed a small backpack with water and snacks, laced up her boots, and drove to the trailhead. As she walked, the cool air filling her lungs and the vibrant leaves crunching beneath her feet, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. The trail wound through a dense forest before opening up to a breathtaking overlook. Standing at the edge of the cliff, the valley stretching out before her, Emma let out a deep breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It wasn't about Jake or Lily anymore. It wasn't about revenge or closure or proving anything to anyone. It was about her, her strength, her resilience, her ability to rebuild a life she could be proud of. Over the next few months, Emma continued to focus on herself. She took up painting, a hobby she hadn't touched since college, and discovered a newfound passion for creating abstract landscapes. She joined a local book club and found herself laughing and debating with strangers who quickly became friends. She even signed up for a cooking class, learning how to make dishes she had once deemed too complicated. Each small step was a reminder that her life didn't end with Jake and Lily's betrayal. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. One evening, as Emma was leaving her favorite coffee shop, she bumped into an old friend from high school, Noah. They hadn't seen each other in years, but their conversation flowed effortlessly. He was warm and kind, with an easy smile that made Emma feel at ease. Over the next few weeks, they began meeting up for coffee and long walks in the park. Emma found herself opening up to Noah in a way she hadn't with anyone else since the breakup. She told him about the wedding, the betrayal, the pain, and he listened without judgment, offering quiet support and understanding. Noah didn't try to fix her or rush her healing. Instead, he reminded her of her own strength, her capacity to move forward on her own terms. As their friendship deepened, Emma realized she was beginning to feel something she hadn't expected: hope. Hope for new beginnings, for genuine connection, for a future that didn't revolve around the pain of her past. One evening, as they sat on a park bench watching the sun dip below the horizon, Noah turned to her and said, "Emma, you've been through so much. But I see someone who's stronger because of it. Someone who deserves all the happiness in the world." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of possibility, of the quiet joy that comes with realizing you've made it through the storm. As she looked at Noah, Emma felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in a long time. She didn't know where their relationship would go, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to find out. Emma had spent so long grieving the life she thought she'd lost, but now she saw that it wasn't lost, it was simply changing. And as she sat there, hand in hand with someone who saw her for who she truly was, Emma realized she was finally ready to embrace whatever came next. Because she was no longer defined by her past. She was defined by her resilience, her growth, and the infinite possibilities of her future.